All right, we're talking about social neoliberalism today and putting black faces in high places to sell imperialism. All right, that's what we're talking about today. So, what is social neoliberalism? So, think of it as putting emphasis on optics and performative measures to preserve public image while maintaining the status quo. So, for example, think about DEI, all right? Think about DEI efforts and like how often they're framed and executed within a neoliberal framework, all right? So, it's like, by what I mean by that is like these initiatives, like this initiative or these initiatives in general, because DEI isn't the only one, they're driven more by market pressures and the desire for positive branding rather than any real genuine commitment to social justice. Okay. So in this context, DEI becomes just a tool for enhancing corporate reputation and meeting market expectations rather than addressing the systemic barriers and inequalities that persist in society and organizations. Like you're seeing all the DEI stuff roll back now because it's no longer, they don't need it anymore. That was only a thing for, the George Floyd situation. That was so the Democrats could win in 2020. That whole thing is out the window now. So they don't need it anymore. It really didn't have anything to do with Trump because it was never, DEI was never really, it was just virtual signaling from the beginning. It's all about optics. That's all it was. It was never about anything substantive. It was never about addressing the systemic barriers and inequalities that persist in society or organizations. Okay. So when we talk about black faces in high places, who could forget these two, Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell? So there's Colin Powell holding up his so-called yellow cake from Iraq. He was instrumental in lying the country into that war. There's Condoleezza Rice there. I remember her saying, if we let Saddam have his nuclear weapons, the evidence could, if we wait for evidence, we have to wait. It might be come in the form of a mushroom cloud or something like that. You know what I mean? Like the stuff they were saying to sell you on this war. It's like Americans have a memory of only 2 weeks. They just forget everything. And they continue to do the same playbook. They go out the same playbook all the time. But I think it's so fitting that Bush is in the background looking at her while she's just smiling like a little jester doing, you know, the bidding of the deep state. So these are two people who pushed empire and war on the global south. Two black people, black faces in high places who push white supremacy and imperialism. So how do these folks look today? Well, they look like Karine Jean-Pierre, who was the former White House press secretary under Biden. All three of them were under the Biden White House. So Sabrina Singh, she's at the DOD. She was the press secretary at the Pentagon. And then Verdant Patel, I think she was the assistant, Karine Jean-Pierre's assistant at the White House press secretary assistant. So they're the ones who got up there telling all kinds of lies, covering for Israel, covering for the genocide, covering for war, covering for white supremacy, covering from just the theft and looting that the empire carries out all over the world. But they put black and brown faces. And brown people, you are not exempt, okay? You are used in the same way by white supremacy, okay? Just because on average you might be on average, a little lighter skinned, you know what I mean? Doesn't mean that you're not used the same way. You're still not white. You're still not a part embraced as white supremacy unless they can use you, you know what I mean? But then you're the first to go once they need to, circle the wagons. All right. So, anyways, keep it moving. And who could forget these two? So this is Robert Wood and Linda Thomas Greenfield. So Robert Wood, he was the representative of the U.S. for special political affairs at the United Nations, and Linda Thomas Greenfield was just the ambassador to the United Nations, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. So she had the bigger post for sure. But you might recognize them a little bit better from these pictures. So that's them raising their hand, saying no to a Gaza ceasefire, saying no to stopping arms shipments to Israel, because the empire always has to use black faces to push white supremacy. It just would look right in terms of optics to have white people up there doing that. I mean, it does under a Trump administration, not Biden. Remember, the Democrats are lean heavily into virtue signaling and using black faces and brown faces to do their bidding, and then call it progress because look, you got black faces in high places. Look, we hired all these black women. What does it matter if they're serving the empire? What does it matter if it doesn't do anything for our health outcomes, if it doesn't make our communities any safer? Well, it just makes you feel good to see them up there voting no for genocide? Okay. So we're gonna watch a couple clips. So listen to some of the language that Robert Wood says here in this. He talks about a two-state solution. We know the ship is sailed on that. So they running out the same tired ass tropes, just running cover in Biden's time so that the Israelis can do what they want to and just totally obliterate Gaza and turn it into a parking lot. So listen to what he has to say here.
Over the years, the U.S. has been perceived as the protector of Israeli interests and casting dozens of vetoes in the Security Council. And lately, the Secretary General Antonio Guterres has slammed Israel for the collective punishment against the Palestinian people in Gaza, saying nothing justifies it. How do you respond to this?
Look, we've been very concerned about civilian casualties in Gaza, and it concerns us greatly. And we have been a leader in trying to help with the humanitarian situation, and we will continue to show leadership in that area. What we've been trying to do, and the focus of our diplomacy, Frank, as you know, has been on trying to get this hostage release ceasefire deal in place. It's been going up and down, but we are still engaged in discussions, and we are looking to see if there's a way to bridge some of the differences between Hamas and Israel, and we're going to continue to do that because we think that that is going to be the surefire way of ending this war, getting the hostages home to their families, and hoping to take from there steps that will lead us to a two-state solution. It's going to take time. It's not going to happen right away, but we first have to do what we can to get that ceasefire.
Whatever, dude. I mean, they run the same bullshit ass interference all the time. So in this next clip, Sabi Sabs is going to talk about Linda Thomas Greenfield and call her out for all her hand raising at the UN when it comes to, ceasefires and halting weapon shipments. So let's listen to this clip.
Those delegates that walked out of the UN are now being labeled as anti-Semitic by Benjamin Netanyahu. I kid you not. You got to hear this, folks.
Joining me now is Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield, the United States Ambassador to the UN. You heard his remarks. It was a very tough speech. There is diplomacy going on behind the scenes with Mr. Blinken, but Israel's Prime Minister is accusing the UN of being anti-Semitic. What's your reaction?
Thank you, Andrew. Great to be on with you. Let me just say, we have raised concerns consistently and unfair bias in the UN system as it relates to Israel.
You have raised your hands multiple times to prevent a ceasefire. Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield, this is the woman that always raised her hand. She has blood on her hands. Always raised her hand to not vote for a ceasefire. Even when they had all the other votes, she was the representative for the United States that would raise her hand to vote against it. So I don't feel sorry for you, Linda. I don't feel sorry for you at all. You wanted to align yourself with this country. You wanted to sit up there and raise your hand to protect them. So now you got to fight on your own. Linda, you're on your own.
Yes, she is, right? The black delegation definitely gives these two up in the racial draft. We do not need anybody like this in our midst. Get them out of the race, for real. So these social neoliberals, whatever you want to call them, tokens, coons, whatever. Here's a better picture, a second picture of her either vetoing a ceasefire or vetoing weapons going to Israel because, she has to serve her masters, right? Black faces in high places, ladies and gentlemen. All right, here's another person. General Michael Langley. Now, General Langley was obsessed with AES. Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso. He had recently had a lot of comments to say about Burkina Faso and what Burkina Faso chooses to do with its own gold, right? So he has some interesting comments. But General Michael Langley is the face America sends to Africa when they want to groom a country to steal all of his shit. You know what I mean? Like Burkina Faso and his gold. So let's listen to what General Langley had to say about Burkina Faso and Burkina Faso's own gold. Okay.
I see this and I don't mind calling them out, but Captori and Burkina Faso, they know that both, whether it's their gold reserves, that is all those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime. There's a number of examples across. Even in Sudan, what's going on with the rapid support forces and Burhan of the Sudan forces, when you get down to it, it's all about the revenue that can be drawn out of that. And there are nefarious actors in the CCP and sometimes Russia are complicit in those activities.
Okay, well, you can't imagine how frustrating it seems to me that this mineral-rich continent has not been able to move.
Absolutely, Chair.
So my man wants you to believe that He's so concerned about Burkina Faso's gold because I don't know, nefarious actors might come and steal it. You know, Russia and China. Get the fuck out of here. Listen, man. Burkina Faso is using its gold reserves in a manner that we don't like, is basically what he's saying. All right. Just to translate what he's saying. Burkina Faso is using its gold reserves in a manner that we don't like. He presented no evidence at all. Basically, like the U.S. and typical U.S., we say it, therefore it is, right? Basically, he just wants U.S. corporations to get access to that gold. That's how regime change, and this is how regime change wars start. You know, starts with the demonization, the smears, the libel, the defamation. You know, it's as if the U.S. is the arbiter of how people should use their resources, according to, you know, General Langley. Or not even according to him. He's just a black face in a high place who's just repeating what his masters are telling him to say, right? So he got a lot of blowback for this. Like he tried to cover his tracks. So we're gonna watch another clip. He tried to cover his tracks. So he cleaned up his language a little bit in the next interview. He tried to soften his stance and make it seem like, you know, it was coming from a place of genuine concern and not colonial blackface. I'll let you be the judge of that. So listen to what he has to say here. This next clip is Zach McQuasa. I totally just butchered that. I can't speak today. But he weighed in, and because General Langley had an interview in Kenya. He was doing the rounds in Africa after like this whole hit, those original comments that you just saw blew up, and he was just trying to, you know, do damage control. But here's some clips from the follow-up interview where he was questioned about, you know, those comments that a lot of people around the continent were really upset about.
About you, Joe, in the meeting? Absolutely, Chairman. You know, I see this, and I don't mind calling them out, but Captori and Burkina Faso, you know, as they know that both, you know, whether it's their gold reserves, that is all those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime. Now, there's a number of those examples across.
You see that? Okay, now let me get you up to date. This is what he said in Kenya a couple of days ago. Watch.
Rule rather than for public welfare. These remarks sparked widespread, you know, condemnation across the continent. What did you mean by that statement?
Let me speak to Burkina Faso's sovereignty. They maintain their sovereignty. They make the decisions how they use their resources. They make the decisions who their resources go to for military support.
Okay, let me just remind you here that he said that Burkina Faso was misusing the resources. The gold is used for their own purpose, talking about the leadership of Burkina Faso, and the people are not profiting from it. In other words, people of Burkina Faso are not seeing anything at all. So there's no road being built, there's no hospitals, there's no school being built, nothing at least from the gold. But yeah, it looks like we're seeing road being built and hospitals, and it's a bit controversial. And Ibrahim Traoré said if it's gold being used, is it your gold?
By claiming that Burkina Faso's mineral resources, as well as certain revenues from cooperation with the People's Republic of China, might not be beneficial to the population and might rather serve to protect the regime in power, General Langley is taking a stand, deliberately ignoring this new sovereignty momentum of Burkina Faso. Such unsubstantial, unfounded, and eminently political comments are all the more worrying because they were made within a parliamentary body as prestigious as the U.S. Senate by a senior military official.
It's our goals, right? Now he's justifying that. They may use what they want to use the way they want to use. Let's continue.
That's their sovereign right. But my cautionary tale was just from a military perspective. That was a Senate Armed Services Committee asking a direct question.
Okay, it was just from a military perspective, nothing to do with anything else. But then why make a comment about a person? Yeah, then it sounds like you are attacking his reputation. Let's continue.
Burkina Faso, a lot of great things going on to progress them forward, okay? But then when you look at the military part of it, knowing that that's the epicenter of global terrorism, it was my time to illuminate that this is probably their weakest point, and there needs to be sufficient resources going towards for the whole fight of terrorism in that country.
Burkina Faso, the epicenter of terrorism. Interesting.
Period. They make their decisions, though. That's their sovereignty, their sovereign right to make their decisions, what is appropriate, what's not. But I wanted to illuminate that it's going in the wrong direction now. ISIS is getting stronger. JNIM is getting stronger. Qaeda in the lands of Maghreb is getting stronger in that country.
Okay, so Mr. Langley elaborates saying that he was talking on a military perspective, like ISIS is getting stronger, JNIM is getting stronger, all these terrorist groups are getting stronger. Burkina Faso is the epicenter of terrorism right now. And on a military perspective, they are not very strong. And what should we do then? Well, and some people will say, then why would we make a comment about the goals? I mean, if it's about war, then why are you talking about the goals? Now, some people make some comments about this. Let's read some of the comments that was made. The comments are very harsh, but we're going to read them. Okay, number one says, Nabila, why doesn't he worry about
That ended on a great question. Why doesn't he worry about black boys in America being murdered by the police? ISIS and all terrorist groups are funded by the U.S. He should never speak to African Africans as he's not one of is and has no good intentions. I mean, I don't agree with every part of that comment, but I do agree with the general gist of that comment in that, like, first of all, well, let me go back to some of the things that he said. So my man said that now Burkina Faso is the epicenter. Whenever the U.S. wants to invade somewhere, they always demonize it as the heart of terrorism, right? So now Burkina Faso is the heart of terrorism. It wasn't the heart of terrorism before Ibrahim Traoré got in there. Now all of a sudden, like in less than a couple years, it's now the epicenter of terrorism. Like it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. You got to be an idiot to not understand what the hell is going on here, right? So yeah, this is what's going on here. You see that? And he also said, like in Zach's video, he said, like, all right, General Langley is like, this is all about from the military. This is from a military standpoint. Then what the fuck you bringing up the gold for? What is that? What is how Burkina Faso uses his gold? What does that have to do with anything? If this is only about military, and you're so concerned about Burkinabe's well-being that you're concerned about all the terrorists around there. Like, come on. And the comment was right. They do fund these terrorists for sure. I mean, just look at. We'll have to deep dive into that. I mean, especially with the French. The French are up to no good when it comes to coming in to protect these countries from terrorism, but then it just gets worse, right? The people who are deemed the terrorists just are spreading and get more land. They get all these drones, all these like Western weaponry, and like how the hell are they getting all that? It's pretty obvious what's going on here. This is about control of resources, all right? And Traoré responded. So this is what he had to say.
First, he talks about Burkina Faso's gold that we supposedly use for our protection and everything. First of all, it's Burkina Faso's gold. It's not his gold. That's the first thing. What business is it of his? It's none of his business. He lied, because Burkina Faso never had gold reserves until we arrived. We are the ones who started reserving gold in the treasury of Burkina Faso. Otherwise, there wasn't a single gram of gold reserve in Burkina Faso. That means he's a liar again. And the aspect that hurt me the most, not because he's a general or because he's American or whatever, it's because he's black. And it hurts a lot to see that they use a black man to fight a black man. The black race must not be used to fight black people. And it hurt us a lot to see that it was a black man who made these remarks.
He's on point. And he just described what the whole game is, So, we're going to play a quick game. What neoliberals say versus what actually ends up happening whenever they want to get involved in your country. Okay? They say shit like they come with all the sugar and spice and everything nice. We care about the people. We want to promote democracy. We're concerned about human rights. We want to help manage resources responsibly. Bullshit. This is what actually ends up happening. Okay? Military intervention, which leads to local instability, plenty of deaths and displacement. You get puppet governments installed or supported. You get resource extraction. Wealth flows to the ever-looting West. And the quality of life for the people worsens. It does not improve. This is what happens. Show up. So, I'll just say, all skin folk and kinfolk, especially in service of empire. Okay? So this has been social neoliberalism, putting black faces in high places to protect imperialism this time. And this sister has some amazing comments to make about this.
Black faces in high places are not going to save us. Just look at the black proponents of Cop City in Atlanta's leadership class. Black faces in high places are not going to save us. Just look at the black woman's hand, ambassador at the UN, voting against a ceasefire in Gaza. That is, our blackness and our womanness are not trustworthy. if we allow ourselves to be conscripted into positions of power that maintain the oppressive status quo. Our Blackness and womanness are not themselves trustworthy if we support the occupation of Black neighborhoods with so-called better trained police, or remain silent about the genocide of oppressed peoples around the world funded by our tax dollars.
She said it. I had nothing to add to that. So, representation does not equal liberation. I will say that again. Representation does not equal liberation. Okay? Now, the establishment wants you to think representation, i.e., diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is not really diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's just the optics piece of that. It's not the substantive piece of that, which is the liberation piece. Okay? So let's go down three takeaways that I hope you take away from this thing. Having Black and brown faces in power positions does not dismantle empire. Diversity without justice only strengthens oppression. And standing on principle means opposing war, theft, and exploitation, no matter who is the face of it. See, some of y'all still playing the red versus blue Pokemon link cable battles, and y'all think, okay, well, when my president or my party is in power, then I'm going to just support, this wars and like this imperialism and all this stuff because they got good intentions, all that nut shit. Stop that. Stand on principle. You don't stand on party. And that's the end. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Like, share, subscribe. There's somebody out there who needs to see this content. Please share it with them. And let's let everybody know what social neoliberalism is and to not be in service of it and to dismantle imperialism at every waking moment. All right. Like, share, subscribe. Have a good one. Until the next one.